We're
that
trying to do
from it.
something that many of us don't get a chance to do, and that is create a business that can live beyond now.
Yep.
Hey, everybody, I appreciate you taking a second to watch this because I'm going into an introduction and I like to kind of create my introduction instead of just saying a couple of things and then jumping into it. But I'm speaking today with Randy Wells, who's the founder of Rockridge Apparel. Now, the brand is a combination of clothing, mentorship, co-working, and he's basically creating a multi-layered approach to styling while also empowering entrepreneurs and everyday people who love to look as good as the level they aspire towards. The company's rooted in the Bay Area, in particular, Oakland, California. My wife's from Vallejo, so big shout out Bay Area. Oh yeah, man. I'm a San Diego dude. But let me get back to this intro. The city itself is going through massive changes, but the history of grinding and fighting to survive is integrated in the DNA of the Bay. When you think about Oakland, in the Bay Area, it's completely unavoidable to bring up movements from the diversity of the Beat generation in San Francisco to the rich legacy and importance of the Black Panthers. While a guy like Tupac may get recognized as an Oakland native, the truth is MCs like Saphir, Paris, Delta Funky Homo Sapien, and across the highway in Vallejo, E40 are more reflective of the culture. And I have to add in the young new guy, La Russell. They're reflective of the entrepreneurial spirit of the Bay Area. This business and purpose-driven ethos of the Bay Area's music was created in the entrepreneurship of what was known as the Black Jazz record label. And a lot of people don't even know what that is. And it was founded in the 60s to give people like Pharoah Sanders a chance at creating music and being distributed. Rockridge carries all of this history, the independent approach to business and art, into the creation of apparel. And Randy Wells, his career is like a key on a map showing the difficult path to becoming a CEO. He's worked as the head of strategy at Dockers, the strategy and insights partnership and corporate development for the Major League Baseball team, the San Francisco Giants. He was the senior brand manager with Tailored Brands. Now, if you know what Tailored Brands is, then you've probably been to Men's Warehouse, Joss A. Banks. He was the senior brand manager at Tailored Brands. He was a project engineer, manager at Electronic Arts, EA. It's in the game. He was the creative services manager at Marc Ecko. That Marc Ecko, you start looking at Complex and people that created Complex, and the streetwear and sneaker culture of today is controlled by Marc Ecko. He was there as a creative services manager at Marc Ecko, the apparel company. And I mean, I really can't explain how important all of this blend of culture and business and how it's led to this rebirth of his brand Rockridge. And I wanted to ask him 10 questions. I know somebody's like, damn, that's a long intro.
That's a great intro, though.
I tried.
I try not to use the word hype, but the hyperbole, though, man, I can learn from that.
Hey, man, it's not hyperbole when it's true.
That's a great 3-minute elevator pitch that I got to borrow for myself.
Take it. I write. It's what I do, and that's what I love. I love writing, and I love sharing. And I'm serious, man. I'm really appreciate you taking time to get these 10 questions in. And I want you all to kind of listen and learn. And then, you know what? Take a minute. I want you to take a minute to let the people know where and how they can find you in Rockridge Apparel. That's the first thing. That's not one of the questions, though. That's the first thing.
Yep. So there's two. Well, first, you can find me in Oakland at the Holiday Residency, which is at 2946 College Avenue. in Berkeley, California.
Oh, you're
Uh,
getting ahead. I think that's
yeah.
a question. Let me see. Where do I have that question?
Oh, dude,
I got that question in there. I don't know. You
okay.
said the holiday residency,
The holiday
which is
residence,
important. That's
which
very
is
important.
important. But I'll tell you this, you could also find me online at rockridgesf.com. And if you scroll to the bottom of the page, and people are actually starting to do it now, there is a banner called office hours. And if you click on that, you can set up time for office hours where I get 30 minutes and you can talk to me about your business idea or your business strategy or an advising session on any kind of help or brainstorming that you need. And it'll either be a Zoom call or you can meet me at the residency and we can talk in person over coffee.
Hey, I created these 10 questions. Now I feel like I might have messed up by creating the 10 questions because you didn't say anything about the apparel just then. You talked about the fact that you're willing to help entrepreneurs. And I want to get to that, but please remind me if I don't get, to that point
Mm-hmm.
of explaining it, just remind me to let you talk further about that. So you entered one of the most difficult businesses at a time when it's extremely hard to reach what I call the distracted consumer.
Well, that's a very apt way of putting it. Yeah.
So, first question, why choose menswear like button downs, sweaters,
That's
hoodies?
the
Why
great question.
choose menswear? Why choose it when apparel is leaning heavily towards casual attire and athleisure? Why choose menswear?
I chose menswear because I wanted to start making clothes for myself. I think that was the first reason. And then the second is at the time that I started the company a couple of years ago, I was really sort of looking at like this ideal target being this entrepreneur, sort of like this self-made person. And the uniform of the day was like button down shirts and jeans. And so I wanted to figure out how can I make a better quality button down shirt with some details that are kind of rooted in this spirit of entrepreneurship, but also just rooted in like the spirit and the culture of the Bay Area. And other thing I will say is like, I think at the time, I was also heavily influenced by Tom Brown. And Tom Brown still makes a really amazing button down Oxford shirt that at the time was like $140. And now I think they go for like 300. So I think like my point of reference at the time, like that was my inspiration of I wanted to make clothing that was tailored and casual and flexible and was sort of like the uniform of the moment.
I think it's important that you said you decided to make clothes for yourself because a lot of the times people walk into apparel and footwear and they're trying to make what's cool or what's trendy. 9 times out of 10, when we walk into a closet, we're looking for something that makes us look good, that fits well, that fits the scope of who we are. And I've said for a very long time, and this is me coming from a sneaker industry perspective, the entire sneaker industry and sportswear industry has completely overlooked the 28 to 65-year-old segment. Everything leans hard towards youth culture.
So the 12, 13-year-old. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And 18,
It goes
19,
younger
12,
and younger.
13, skinny
Yeah.
jeans,
Yep.
stuff like that. And I'm like, yo, sometimes I want to shoot from a business meeting to a dinner. And I want to look good and presentable. And that's not saying that if you're wearing a hoodie, you're not presentable. That's simply saying there's a certain group of people that I'm going to have to talk to. I'm going to have to present myself, but I still want to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
So like this tartan button down with the pearl,
That is like one of our most popular shirts,
love
especially
it.
in the fall.
Love it, especially in the fall. Like the temperature's starting to drop here. It's
Yeah,
not
the
bad
temperature
here
starts to
now.
drop. Yeah, like we had a opening party last week. Like 5 people showed up with that shirt, including myself, and then another 3 people bought it.
That because it's perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
like I love to wear what I believe in. Like right now, the shoes that I'm wearing are community made, which is a business in Los Angeles where they are hand constructing footwear in Los Angeles. And you should connect with them because I love to see a Rockridge pair of shoes. I buy that,
Yeah,
right? And they
I've been
hand
thinking
make
about
them down
that.
there in LA. So they're constructing and crafting the shoes there. But that does kind of get us ahead. Um,
Hmm.
Number two, the next question, because I do want to roll through these questions and stay on
Yep.
point because I want people to get a lot of information concise and straight
Hmm.
to the point. So Rockridge is a made in the US brand.
Some of our product is made in the US.
Okay, okay.
And
All right.
some of it is made in the US, most of it is made in Asia. There's a reason for that beyond cost. It's really the the sourcing of the materials when you produce in Asia and then producing in small batches and small quantities
Mm-hmm.
is a lot more efficient and manageable when you produce in Asia. Producing in the US is hard in the sense that like you, the individual, have to source all of your materials and all of your trim. So one of the challenges that I had producing in the US was that I can find the fabrics that I wanted, but then like finding mother of pearl buttons, they're coming from Japan. Finding like the collar tape that's on the inside of the collar, that came from Vancouver.
Yeah.
Um, then having to source the fabric, then take it down to LA, have it washed so that it's pre-shrunk. Then from there, it gets shipped to the factory over in Brooklyn. Great people, and then they make it. And it's like, I think when you're a small team, it's it's really hard to sort of be able to manage that all by yourself.
Yeah.
And then because we're also producing small quantities, we're at the back of the assembly line, for the larger orders that get produced.
Right.
And then there's also a cost component where the cost of making and manufacturing domestically is higher. And I just felt that there's a price sensitivity when you're an unknown brand
Yeah.
that people are reluctant to pay. And so in order for me to be able to, and it's not even so much get my cost down, it's really just to hit my margins. It's
Yeah.
just like I needed to find a factory that could produce more than one type of garment, but then can also source all of the materials and get me the best price per unit to be able to do that. So that's part of the reason why we shifted over to Asia. And now, as we head into spring, summer, I'm actually partnering with an African American factory that has facilities down in LA. And we're going to start producing teas and some other product with them so that we are bringing back some of our product onshore.
I love the importance of what you just said is that when you're small, you're able to shift and adjust and move quickly to save your brand. Because I love, it's admirable that a company wants to be made in the US. It is, but the reality of pricing and cost, which is one of the questions that I was going to have, was going to be about pricing. But
Mm-hmm.
what I want to hit on real quick is this fact of being a, a Black owned brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it important for you to show that you're Black owned if it means you could potentially alienate a broader demographic of customers? Now, I'm asking that question because um, when people say something's Black owned, everybody automatically assumes it's only for Black people.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that is, and at least from the perspective of my brand, is if you were to go to the website, I don't think you would know that it was owned by a Black person. So I think how we present the brand is really based around a set of values and a mindset and maybe a certain cultural nuance. Um, and so that's how the brand is presented. I don't shy away from being a Black owned brand. I just think being a Black owned brand just means that I'm the boss.
Yeah,
So this
yeah,
is who you're dealing with.
and
Um,
it's just really it's really frustrating to be uh, I'm trying not to say this and put two words together where somebody can cut it and be like, he said it's frustrating being Black. I don't want people to think that's what I'm saying. It's frustrating, though, as a Black creative and a person in an industry where, in menswear, particularly in menswear,
Mhm.
people automatically assume that because you have items that are made in the US and because you are creating this thing, the potential for alienation happens when other cultures sit down and they say, well, it's Black owned, well, it's not for me. And it doesn't make sense that a Black founder has to both explain why your expenses are what they are, why your product is priced what it is, and then to explain that I'm not making this just for Black folks. I'm making this for everybody. Everybody's an
Mhm.
entrepreneur.
Mhm.
So you have a brand, Rockridge, that's built around entrepreneurship, and everybody's an entrepreneur. There's no Black entrepreneur, white entrepreneur. Now, are the circumstances different that we face? Definitely. They're different. Access to capital, all these different things. But when you have to explain Rockridge, and you have to explain that it's not expensive, because the quality is on par with these luxury brands, how do you relay the values of the company, the cost of the product, when most of the potential consumers look at sportswear and streetwear as more trendy and cheaper, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's a really great question. I think for me, it's just like where I start with, and I think everybody does it is, I think our biggest challenge is just that we have low brand awareness. So in a lot of cases, the first step is just like people just want to know like who you are, what's the brand, what is it about? And I think where I've been successful is, and even this is hard to wrap around people's head, it's just like it's a brand for people who are entrepreneurs and leaders and creatives. And the goal of this brand is to really accomplish two things. Like one, through clothing, support the next generation of entrepreneurs and leaders, both through clothing as well as through resources. And we start with menswear, but obviously we want to be a much broader lifestyle brand. And two, how I define entrepreneurship is focusing on Black and Brown as well as women entrepreneurs. And I define it as a counterpoint to the Silicon Valley narrative of what entrepreneurship is. And to that is it's just like not everybody is trying to build a company that's going to receive a lot of VC capital and be the next $1 billion company. And when I think locally and think about the community, it's just like the businesses that really do the majority of the hiring as well as retaining are small businesses that do $1 to $2 million a year on average, are the ones that are really keeping the local economy and the local community afloat. So, for me, it's just like I think when I talk about the brand from that sort of context, is just the question of race never really comes up. Now, when it comes to actually doing business, I think it takes non-Black people a minute or two to digest that something of this quality, of this level of intentionality and thought, can be priced at this price point or have this kind of value. And I just associate that with it is the conditioning of our country. I think when it comes to the idea of anything that is luxury, it is always associated with European sensibilities.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it's just like, and when you think about American luxury, at least when it comes to fashion, Ralph Lauren and Tom Ford,
Yeah.
it's about all you got. Um, so I think it's harder for an older generation to digest that an African American, can design with that same level of like taste and sensibility, and then have the business chops to command that kind of value, just because on an everyday basis, they're not interacting with Black people that are in a position to charge them something like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think the other side of it too is just that when it comes to Black popular culture, and I think this is like an observation as well as a criticism. When it comes to Black popular culture, it's become commoditized to such a degree, whether it's in music, whether it's in fashion, et cetera, that your non-African American consumer doesn't value the products, whether it's in the apparel space or otherwise, that we present to them when it comes to the business side of it, because so much of their interactions when it comes to Black culture is commoditized and cheapened.
Yeah. Yeah. That, that may be the use of the word commoditized, commodification, commodified in regard to Black culture and the perception of what there's this generalization coming, stereotype coming. And I don't like dabbling in stereotypes, but this belief that Black people are always looking for a hookup. And because they're looking for a hookup, they don't want to pay for quality product. And you have levels of different communities, just like you have Black people who are in lower income situations. You have white people who are in lower income situations.
Mm-hmm.
They may call someone trailer people, or we may say people are
Mm-hmm.
from the hood. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what culture you are. These kind of categories exist, as a hierarchy. So the consumer isn't one big homogenous puddle where you can just jump in, splash, and get all of these puddles to land on you, and they're all going to consume and buy what you're creating. You have to target and find those consumers. Now, in a place like Oakland, because I said, my
Mm-hmm.
wife's from Vallejo. We know that Vallejo went bankrupt,
Yeah.
right? As a city, the city went bankrupt. We know that the cost of living, and I'm changing gears here from this discussion of commodification because it fits in perfectly with this next question.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the Bay Area. The cost of living there is ridiculous. We left California for a reason. But specifically San Francisco, San Diego, we are in the highest. Oakland, same thing.
Yeah.
And they're gentrifying the hell out of Oakland. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the Oakland that it was 20, 30 years ago, even. And research is shown that a family of 4 in Oakland, in the Bay Area, has to make a minimum of $120,000 a year to get above the poverty line. This means that somebody that's making 100,000 could qualify for food stamps in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to switch that, you just opened a space in one of the most expensive areas in the country, and it's both co-work and clothing.
Mm-hmm.
I need for you, and you started talking about this earlier, I need for you to explain this new Rockridge store experience, because it sounds a lot like Bricks and Wood in LA. Bricks and Wood is
It
a
is.
clothing
Yeah.
company,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and they
Yeah.
created Spaces. So Spaces in LA, they put it in South Central, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a store, but it's really a community organized place where people can come and work and do events. You just created this Rockridge experience. And what's the name of that experience? And can you just explain that store experience to me?
Yeah. So it's called the Rockridge Holiday Residency. Um, shorthand, like it's a pop-up shop, but the reason why I refer to it as a holiday residency is because, in addition to being a founder, I also consider myself the artistic director. So there's a creative and curatorial approach to the space. And what the space is designed for is to attract dreamers and creators and entrepreneurs and people who even have ideas to be able to have a space where they can all come together and share ideas as well as share resources. And some of the resources that are being provided are they're almost like every 2 weeks now, but basically different events um, that are all focused around entrepreneurship. So we have incubators that will be giving talks about how to access capital, how to receive mentorship or whatever resources that you need to move your business forward. We'll have talks with VCs, and are all people of color, to sort of really kind of deconstruct what the venture capital world and landscape is really like. One of the things that I've sort of have experienced over time when I talk to entrepreneurs is like everybody is looking for capital, but generally because they hear about venture capital all the time, they approach venture capital and they get turned down. And so one of the things that I wanted to do with this particular talk is like, I think we need to really break down like what venture capital is, how does that model work, what type of businesses, are right for venture capital, which ones aren't, and then where are those other access to capital that you can find, whether it's in, your local community bank, whether it's through an incubator program, or whether it's through, angel investors, and kind of sort of bring this community together so that people have access to this resource.
I gotta, sorry about that. I gotta interrupt you and ask you, are you going to videotape any of these events and make them into digestible kind of pieces of content?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
all
so.
of the platforms? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't understand venture capital. They don't understand what it takes to actually become a funded company. And the fact that you're going to address that is super important, and it needs to be kind of shared. And I think it'd be an excellent piece of content to start bringing consumers to the site. Are you going to begin to take the site and create it as a hub of information as well?
Yeah, I think that becomes like the next iteration of it. I mean, I've been having conversations around like Web 3.0, and like what does that look like? How do you bring that into reality? And I think for me, like that Web 3.0 is going to be more of how does Rockridge become a resource hub, as well as a retail shop, so that when you come to the site, you're coming more for the resources and the access to all of the tools and information that you can use. And if you happen to shop, then you happen to shop. I think one thing for me when I think about this brand was that I wanted all the marketing to be focused around how do we empower our customer? How do we give them information? And how do we use marketing as a way to provide that information or provide those resources, and do it in a way where it still aligns with our brand values and our brand aesthetic?
I like that. The website as a tool is going to be and I had another question about marketing, and it's not necessarily about finding the consumer and doing this work. It's about how you are going to overcome the cost associated with acquiring new fans of Rockridge. And I think you kind of answered that. And more important, as far as marketing is concerned, do you think it's more important what the product looks like, or is marketing really the end all be all for success?
The product matters. The product matters. What I will say is that I think you can get away with a fairly mediocre product in the short term. You won't get away with it in the long term. The apparel space is just too competitive of a space at every price level that there's always a substitute. So what I would suggest is, rather than make a mediocre product, make the best product that you can, even if it's just a t-shirt. I think the things that you want to be, you always want your customer to feel like they're getting something of value and of quality. And I don't care how good the marketing is, if the customer experience when they interact with your product or when they interact with you doesn't live up to the marketing expectations, I was just like, then the marketing won't work anymore.
That's a fact. That is a very good fact. And I think a lot of people spend a whole lot of time on TikTok or on Instagram marketing, and the customer service is subpar, the product is subpar.
Yeah, like one thing I tell like my team in the store is like, look, there's a lot of things that we can do to spend money to like drive business. But there's one thing, the most important thing that we can do to differentiate us that doesn't cost anything is white glove customer service.
I love that.
I was just like, if we can deliver white glove, one-on-one customer service, everybody who comes in here, they're not expecting it. So when they get it and they walk out, then it's like, it's sort of like the three key takeaways. It's like, this store is really interesting and unique. It takes me a minute to actually digest what it is, but that's a good thing. Then two is just like, this service was really amazing. And then three is like, and the product is really good. And to me, it's just like, and I explained this to the photographer that we worked with, is like, he was just kind of showing me some mock-ups with the Rockridge logo across it. And I was just like, we don't need that. I was just like, because I'm building the brand around an experience, around a set of values, around a philosophy, and around like the quality of the product. And if I can deliver on those three things, that those are the things that become memorable because they're so unique in how we approach it, they will automatically associate it with Rockridge. If anybody else created a pop-up shop that was a space for dreamers and it was a room full of clouds, people would immediately think, oh, that must be Randy Wells at Rockridge.
That imagery is incredible, by the way. I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and it's smart, it's playful, and it reminds me of Around the World in a Day, Prince. I'm
Yeah.
just, the album cover is the clouds. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I really love the look of that space because it invites you to feel it. Most of the
Childlike.
time, people say blue is cold, and you don't put blue in a
I feel
retail
pretty warm
space.
in there. Yeah, it's pretty warm in there.
Yeah, I'm like, to have this blue space, it just feels bright. And I think
Mm-hmm.
happiness is important. And that styling of the space, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions here, and then we're going to
Mm-hmm.
get ready to wrap up because I don't want to go too long. I want people to stay engaged the whole time. All of your experience in the past sounds like it really prepared you, because a lot of people try to become entrepreneurs and they haven't experienced anything. So, how did your work history? This is the first question, and then I'm going to go to a second one. How did your
Mm-hmm.
work history prepare you for founding Rockridge and doing what you're doing with this holiday residency? Right? That's the first question.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one after that is, you kind of talked about the fact of not being a $1 to $2 million business. Do you have any desire to eventually be featured in like a New York Fashion Week? And to wrap it up, the final question: what is Rockridge, and what do you want people to know about what you're doing in fashion and in the community? So it's really three questions.
Three
Wrap it
questions.
up,
Okay.
and then let everybody know where they can find you. And we're going to
All right.
wrap this up. And this is just going to be a strong 3 minutes of you diving into these questions. So you have the
Yeah.
floor. Kill them. Go.
1 minute each. All right. I would definitely, funny enough, all of my education is non-creative. I went to school and studied sociology. I went to graduate school, studied political science. I went to Oxford for a couple of summers. I studied their political science. I even went to business school, and very little of that actually has anything to do with how I run the business. Most of what I've learned to prepare me for the business is actually working for other people. um, and what I will say is that the way in which I was been prepared is probably two ways. Like one, uh, one reason why I started a business for myself is because I never found the fulfillment that I was looking for at the places that I've worked. And two, I would say, I think the biggest lessons that I've learned working in business, early starting a business, is really being obsessed about the space as well as all of the details that it takes to do it, and really being tight about managing cash flow. Generally, when businesses go out of business, it's because they can't manage cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And what will keep you in business is being able to manage cash flow. And then I would say just like what I've also learned, and this is just kind of at my last stop when I was at Dockers and head of strategy, is the importance of strategy and the difference between strategy and tactics. And so one thing, well, we don't have enough time. So another video, I'll explain that and give an example. What was your second question?
The second one was about, do you want this brand to become something that's
So the
that's
second question, so I believe that the highest form of philanthropy is to build a company that you can hire other people, pay them real wages, and create a space for them to be able to maximize their potential. So in my mind, it was just like my goal is to build a large company, and the company that I probably model the most because I read their annual reports is LVMH. As far as looking towards, personally, I don't particularly look to New York Fashion Week or the industry for any form of like validation. However, I think that if I build this company right and it grows the way that I want it and expect it to grow, that I think those opportunities will present themselves, and obviously we'll take advantage of it, because I think our point of view matters, and I think our point of view matters even on that stage and sort of within that space. And then third, and I don't remember that question.
Don't even worry about it. We're going to get ready to wrap it up.